Hey all, let's dive in. I am excited to share the first, hopefully of many, we'll see how this goes, of a track breakdown. So today we're going to look at Things People Say. This was a single that I put out a couple years ago. I actually don't remember the release date, but the reason that I'm choosing this is because it's got enough layers that it'll actually hopefully be interesting for us to pick it apart and see how this was put together from recording to mixing, because I recorded all this myself in my studio and mixed all of it as well. So hopefully this kind of gives you insight into what this sounds like. But before we sort of dive in, let's listen to a little bit of what this song sounds like.
Pretty fast, don't you think?
All right, so that gives you kind of a high level overview. So let's dive in. It's got quite a few elements, and let's start with the acoustic guitars. So I'm going to solo those and let's listen. So because I had to track this song really quickly, and I actually recorded it to submit it to a compilation project. And because of that, the submission deadline was coming up. I had this song written and I had ideas for how this might go if I were to record it, but I hadn't started yet. So this compilation project came out and I thought it was a perfect opportunity to just go for it. And so because of that, I actually recorded a lot of this in ways that I wouldn't recommend you record it. And what do I mean by that? Well, I think there's going to be a lot of good examples, but let's start with acoustic guitar. So if I solo these, what I did is I actually recorded the acoustic part twice, and then I panned one to hard right and one to hard left, and let's hear what that sounds like. This is kind of through the verse. And then in the chorus, I'm just kind of picking. So this is more of a textural thing that's just going to happen through the entire song. What's interesting, and obviously that's if I don't pan this, right? If I put this one up to the center, if I mute this one, it would kind of sound like this. But if I put it over here and then double it, you get this nice kind of textural effect that fills out the stereo image more. But the acoustic was actually recorded through this SM7 directly, which is usually not a mic I would record acoustics with, but it worked out. And that's just kind of what they do the whole song. They don't really do a lot of interesting things, but that was a texture I laid down really quickly. If I look at what I did with the acoustics, I did an EQ and I just did a low cut. Okay. Not really good mixing on that, Ben, but that's fine.
Hey, tell me
You
how
can hear in the
long
mix, they just kind of sit in the background. So let's go into electric guitars next, because there's quite a few of those throughout the song, and I think it kind of turned out cool. So if you listen to, through the verse, let's listen to that. I recorded what I call the Jangle Electric. Let's solo that. And that's like this in the mix. So the electric guitar, all of this is actually recorded directly into my audio interface. So because, again, I was recording really quickly, I didn't have time to set up, I didn't have my amp set up at the time. So when we look at this, I've actually got this going through a tape guitar tube drive reamp plugin from Cleveground. And then I have compressor. And then I'm actually running this through Valhalla's Supermassive. So if I listen to this, let's just solo a section here and loop it. So if I turn off all these things, this is what it sounded like. Putting it through the reamp, compressor, and Supermassive. It kind of gets this like spacey, chill sound. It's just meant to kind of sit in the mix as well.
Kids fading pretty fast.
And so what you can hear that's doing is if I combine this with the acoustics, it's kind of like one step up from individual picking on the acoustic. It's starting to get into a little bit of a strum. This is kind of mirroring a lot of what the acoustics are doing, but strumming a little bit more. So that's that baseline electric. When we get into the chorus, let's turn off this looper here. Get into the chorus. What I did here is I wanted to record another couple guitar parts. They're slightly panned to left and right, but let's listen to those together. Two harmonizing parts that are going to come on the left and right side of the stereo image. Oh man, okay. You want to listen to what you shouldn't do in recording is here. We'll listen to how this ends. Wow. So that cuts off awkwardly. I should not have done that. Okay. That's hilarious. I never noticed that before. That's another recording don't. So if I could explain this, you should never have your sound just cut off. You should have at least a volume cut, but allow that tail of that note to actually ring out where you're not cutting it off. And I didn't do that. I don't know if I actually, yeah. So interesting. And this is similar. You can see here, this has a tremolator on it. So this is the Soundtoys plug-in tremolo, and I put it through Supermassive. The other one, same thing, tremolator, Supermassive, and then I was putting this through Things Motor, which, let's listen to just this one, because man, so this one has a little bit of like, what's interesting about this is I'm using this as a tremolo, a little bit of tremolo vibrato, and then it's also panning quite a bit. So this is kind of something I had used before I started getting into pan mans. It's kind of panning back and forth between left and right. So those are those electric guitars. Those are the main ones throughout most of the song. And then let's see here. We can get into the bridge a little bit, but I'm going to kind of go through. Let's see. Yeah, in the bridge, let's see here. We kind of break it down later in the song. So this is where I wanted to kind of really open it up more. And so this spacey bridge guitar, I named it aptly. So this is kind of cool. It's another direct into my interface. But if we just listen to this without any of the things I did to it, here's what it sounds completely sort of, untouched. So this is like a Stratocaster just directly into the audio interface. But what I did is I ran that through the Soundtoys crystallizer, which is like a crystallized frozen reverb type of, it's like granular echo synthesizer is what they call it. But I ran through that through the crystallizer. So it goes from this to just with that on, it goes to really cool plugin. Reamped that through an amp simulator and then put it through the Valhalla Supermassive Space Verb preamp. Really cool. And you can hear that in the middle of that bridge breakdown.
Time moving fast when we think it's going slow.
So that's most of the guitars that we want to account for. So those are electric guitars. Again, really quickly recorded into my interface and just got what I could. And it ended up working out. And then there's actually a lot of synths here. So let's listen to that. So if we listen to the intro, what does it sound like? Yeah, okay. So you notice a lot of the guitars I had before were just kind of picking like open, very open. But then when you hear everything in the mix, there's this very driving dun 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 happening that can easily sound like a guitar almost at first. But what that actually is this drivey synth. So let's listen to that. And that is, I wrote about this in my Substack. It's like the sequential take 5, one of my favorite all-time synths. It sounds really good, and it gives kind of that almost like it's just such a driving sound in the verses. So
Rome wasn't built in a day. Tell me, how long did it take? Okay.
and then if we look at the other synth that's in there is also the take 5. This is an arpeggiator that's happening, kind of bubbling over everything, lots of movement. It's also a sequential take 5 on a patch. And so what I'm doing there is I'm actually using Pan Man here, and you can see it's moving between the left and right channel, kind of over and over again automated, which is a really cool effect that I've come to love for synthesizers and key parts. And then if I go into, the verse here,
It's gonna last.
so again, this is lower,
'Cause it feels like it's fading.
but you really need that drivey synth really helps that verse kind of move along, which is really cool. And those are the kind of main points. And then we get into the bridge. What's actually cool is I really wanted to have another sort of, I think it's another kind of bubbly sequencer arpeggiator happening. And so the Take 5 is an analog synth that's in my studio, and this is actually going to be Alchemy. So this is a preset I found built into Logic that's called 70s Analog Sequencer, and I just chose the nice preset. I messed with a couple of the settings like reverb and low pass filter, but I just thought that was really nice, and it came for free with Logic, so I threw that in there, and you can hear just a really nice thing that's kind of over off to the right as we go in. So those are the synths throughout the song. Those are primarily the main parts. And again, I really didn't do a ton here. You can see, I was just going to point to my screen, but you can see the volumes changing. I use a lot of automation. So the other thing too is, I think it's just, so if I show automation, you can see I'm also doing a lot of automated volume adjusting for these parts as the song goes through, wanting to make sure everything's at the right level and cutting out when I'm overlapping things. You can see here in Drivey Synth, I wanted to actually get the verse part. So I re-recorded that. I cut out and faded out the other part to make sure that the right part's playing. This is something I do. It's pretty much on every track. There's gonna be a lot of automation as well. So those are the synths. And we'll skip the vocals for now. I really want to also talk about the bass guitar because I think it's a fun one. So let's listen here. This is my bass. And what's interesting about this bass, let's take a look at it, is this is actually not a bass guitar. So I didn't have a bass when I was recording this song. I have friends who are really great bass players, and it was just quick, and I needed something really quickly. So actually what I did here is, if we listen to this, let's listen to this without anything on it. So this is actually my Fender Stratocaster at the time, and I ran it through a pitch shifter. I just shifted it down an octave and ran it through radiator preamp at an amp sim. I added this EQ. It escapes me what I even did with that. I ran it through the Waves TG12345 plugin and a channel EQ. This is what I did. That's what it sounds like. Fits in the mix. But again, it's not a bass at all. Not a bass guitar. It's just an electric guitar. So we've looked at guitars. We've looked at synths. We can now look at drums. So what's interesting about drums is actually for the majority of the song, because again, time was of the essence. I found a beat that was Apple's drummer. So this is Apple's Logic Pro's drummer plugin. And basically, you go in here and choose, you have your drum kit designer that you can choose the types of drums you're using. This is based on like a preset. And this is an I believe AI drummer. And I configured the beat, and this fit the sound I was looking for. And I added in a tambourine here in the chorus. And,
We're all gonna.
And then in the verse, we bring it down. So this is just from Apple. Really appreciate that, from Logic. But when, we got into the bridge, I really had something that I wanted to do specifically. So I actually did not use any of the programming. And what I did is, this is another virtual kit. But I took that same Liverpool kit. I believe this is sort of based off of like the Beatles type sound. And you can hear kind of this transition between the rest of the song and into the bridge. So I really wanted this specific sound, kind of open it up for the bridge. So I just programmed these.
Time moving fast when we think it's going slow. Could it be?
All right, you're hearing a bunch of vocals there, and so now let's kind of round it out. That's what I did for drums. We'll wrap it up with the vocals. So this has been going on long enough. Okay, so vocal chain, this is something that I've kind of developed over the last couple of years that I end up really liking. And so I started the song in the verses here. Most of the verses, it's just a single vocal.
Tell me, how long did it take? Who cares anyway? It just took a while to make.
Now what's interesting about this is usually I would do some more editing there. Like I would take out the space in between my words. I would clean up this track, but for the sake of time, I didn't have the luxury of that. So what I did is I actually have a vintage vocal there's like a vintage vocal setting I really love on this Waves TG12345 channel strip. It's an Abbey Road channel strip. It just really is so good on vocals. I use it all the time. So if we take this, let's just focus on this.
Who cares anyway? It just took a while to make. Who cares anyway?
This is,
It just took a while to make.
that's with nothing.
Who cares anyway?
But if I add that Abbey Roads
It
plug
just
in here,
took a while to make.
just really thickens up the vocal really nice. And then I added Echo Boy.
Who cares anyway? It just took a while to make.
Just a saturator on there. And then I believe I did, oh boy, what did I do? Did I do a little plate? What did I just turned it off. Yeah, I think I did plate, or I did vintage verb channel EQ.
Who cares anyway? It just took a while to make.
So yeah, and then I ran it through Valhalla Vintage Reverb, 70s colorization, just a 10% mix of like a medium kind of decay room setting. But when I get into the pre-chorus and the chorus, I doubled the vocal.
How long do you think this is gonna last?
So these together sound like this.
'Cause it feels like it's fading pretty fast, don't you think?
So that's those. And then in the chorus, what it is just like a bunch of harmonies together. So if I actually go ahead and solo this.
Ooh.
Okay, again, recorded this really quick. This is rough. I mean, this is real rough. So if you go in here, like listen to this. Oh man, okay. That was me alone, harmonizing with myself. But you know what? Sometimes it works out okay. That's the vocals. And then there's just one fun extra Easter egg in the bridge that we can go in. Is in the bridge, this song is about the phrases people say about time. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. And testing fate and like, you know, time passing by, and just, you know, the lyrics are talking about in the bridge. Isn't it funny how things go? Time moving fast when we think it's going slow. Could it be simpler than it seems? Maybe today is sweeter than all our dreams. And I was thinking about how time passes by. And so what I wanted to do is actually have my kids come out, and I asked if they wanted to be in a song. They said yes. And I had my daughters read phrases in the microphone, say things like, "It seems like it was just yesterday," and "Oh, how the time goes." And I took their audio. Here's what it sounds like in the background. So what I did is I just did some time manipulation. You can hear it in the background here.
Funny how things go. Time moving fast.
And that's them saying those phrases, and I just slowed it down and reversed it. Popped it in the background. So there you go. So there you go. That's things people say, how I made it. I hope you found it interesting. I'll do some more breakdowns, and we might head over to Ableton for some of my newer stuff. But I've mixed a lot in Logic for this. And let me know if you have any questions, or you are curious about any of the other plugins I used. But I'm going to call this a day, you know. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time.